Welcome back to the Run It Back MMA podcast, episode number 37. That's right, I'm not Sugar Snags. You might notice a little bit of change of pace in the intro to this episode. We are parentless. It's almost like we are home alone. Parents have gone off to the movies and we've been left to our own devices. That's right, DL is off on a Australian road trip. Snags, from what I understand, is off writing a best-selling novel. I am the Statman and I am here with my, we say guest star or like, what do they always call us? Our like guest co-hosts. We're running the show today. So no, this is producer Statman and producer Stoney. You're sitting in the big chair. How do you feel?
I feel like this has been well earned over a long period, Statman. Yeah. I was going to start off with, you might recall me as being a 26 consecutive week leader of the Run It Back podcast, but 100% my greatest achievement is tonight, sitting in the executive producer's big chair. It doesn't get any better than this. It reminds me a lot, and you'll appreciate this one, Statman, an episode of Rory's War back in the late 1990s where Vince left Shane in charge, and Shane went ahead and set up a whole range of fights for the night, which on paper looked good. But in the end, I think Team Corporate lost the hardcore belt, the tag team titles, and may be wrong, but I think The Rock might have dropped the world champ to Mankind. And I'm not saying tonight has a distinctly similar feel, but I think the boys might be sitting back just a little bit nervous as to what comes out.
I know that Snags is sitting hunched over a typewriter as we speak, desperately panicking, and he keeps writing, instead of writing S for submission, he keeps writing Statman Stoney, Statman Stoney. He's panicking. DL, I hope you're not driving anywhere, because I know absolutely sure he'd be checking his phone for messages as we are here. But we've watched it. We've watched you guys produce the podcast. We don't have the hot takes for this episode. Unfortunately, there's only the two of us in the thing, but we do have the regular segments that we do know and love. We've got a leaderboard update. Only 3 podcasts left until we get to the end of the season, and it is getting neck and neck. There is 4 necks in the race, but one has been lagging behind significantly. How you feeling? Sitting pretty?
Look, not sitting pretty. I think we're in pretty good shape, given we've got 3 podcasts thereabouts to go before the end of the year. You're spot on. DL's not fully out of the race. He's sitting, within arm's reach, within striking distance. But poor old Snags, I can hear the violins. He's just counting down the days till we can reset that ledger and start again, because he has just drifted so far behind, and I could not be happier, Statman.
This episode, we're also picking for our UFC 255 card. We have producer DL and Sugar Snags with their predictions. But first, perhaps we should get into a leaderboard update. We predicted for UFC Fight Night Vegas 13 and 14. On the 14 card, there were a few fight changes, but we'll get into that. Getting into some results on UFC Vegas 13, we had Yan Xiaonan defeat Claudia Gadelha by unanimous decision. Andrei Arlovski defeated Tanner Bozar by unanimous decision. And Glover Teixeira defeated Thiago Santos by submission with a rear naked choke, which was a absolute fantastic fight. Into UFC Vegas 14. Now, we actually picked only 2 fights on this card, and would you believe it, neither fight actually came to fruition, or fruition as I should say. But we did do some picks on our Instagram, and those 2 picks do go towards the leaderboard. So instead of Brian Barberena and Daniel Rodriguez and Rafael Dos Anjos and Islam Makhachev, we went instead to the co-main event, Chaos Williams defeating Abdul Razak Al Hassan via KO in 30 seconds in the first round. And on late notice, Paul Felder stepped up against Rafael Dos Anjos, but unfortunately was unable to get the victory with a split decision victory going the way of Rafael Dos Anjos. I will say, as valiant as the effort was from Paul Felder, in no way should that have ever been considered a split decision. It was an absurd judge's decision to award 3 rounds to Paul Felder. I could have seen maybe 1, and one judge scored it 3 rounds to 2 in favor of Paul Felder. Before we get into the leaderboard update, did you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, look, I think there was a clip come out today or yesterday of Paul Felder zoomed in when the judges were reading the scorecards, and I think his face, says everything that needs to be said about that decision. He was as surprised by as anyone. One thing I would like to touch on, Statman, is getting back to the Thiago Santos and Teixeira fight.
Yeah.
What a roller coaster that was. I can remember writing the highs and lows in the group chat. Obviously, you and I were head to head on that one. At various points, I thought this is over and I'm going to take this point, a much needed breath of fresh air between me and the Statman. And then just as soon as I started to get ahead of myself, sure enough, the fight would go to the ground. And then, I noticed you were getting a little bit more chirpy in the group chat, and we exchanged these back and forth for, at least 3 or 4 times each before finally Thiago succumbed. And that was the end of the fight. But that was a ripping fight. That's up there. I'm not going to say fight of the year or anything outlandish like that, but certainly that's one of the more exciting fights that I've watched in a long, long time.
I look at that fight as similar in scope to, say, like an Andre Arlovsky, Travis Brown kind of fight, where the momentum shifts in the fight make for a very, very fun fight. I had put a fair bit onto my pick with Glover Teixeira. And about 30 to 40 seconds into the fight, I was regretting my decision greatly. And then I remembered that the fighter that I bet on was Glover Teixeira. So, of course, if he was going to win, that was the only way he was going to win. Get clobbered, get knocked down, get dragged into a brutal fight. No one else in the light heavyweight division, I think, could take those shots from Thiago Santos and come out the victor. Glover Teixeira at 40 plus, is he 42? He's still hanging around. He's the unlikeliest number one contender in any division in the UFC. And as much as we are on the Izzy train, maybe you least of all of the 4 boys, but as much as we're on the Izzy Jan Blachowicz train, what a story Glover Teixeira Jan Blachowicz would be. And I'd have to say, in that fight, no discredit to Jan Blachowicz, I'd have to say that Glover Teixeira would probably be the favourite, which is insane for a man of his age and not necessarily his ability. He's obviously a very talented martial artist, but he's been through some wars.
Mate, you've absolutely nailed it. Glover, I thought, was down and out years ago. I'd ridden him off and thought his best days were past. And he's just one of these fighters that just keeps finding a way to reinvent himself and peak at the right time. And I think that's what we're seeing now, that, opportunity can and will present. And he's right there in line waiting for that opportunity when it does come. And, based on what we just saw, you'd be silly to, say that he couldn't do it. I think he's firmly in the mix. He's got the skill set, that could really mix it with anyone in that division. And I agree, it'd be a phenomenal story if he ended up touching gold this late in his career.
Let's go into a leaderboard update, because while there kind of was a position shift. There was I think it was tied second, equal third nonsense going around. So we put that to bed. So in 4th position and doing himself no favours, Sugar Snags with 0 points across the 2 cards is on 59. DL, standalone 3rd with only the 1 point across the 2 cards, 68 points. Statman, myself, yours truly, 4 points and pulling myself up to 71, standalone 2nd place. Stoney, 3 points, 1 ahead, 72 points, the clear winner still and still.
Look, mate, I can't say I'm not enjoying it, but I'm not enjoying seeing just how narrow that margin of victory as it currently stands is. Just the 10-1 selection. So, this is still anyone's game. I do lol every time I see Sugar Snags. None more so than this week where he's pulled the double donut, and I haven't seen that for a long, long time, Statman. So, yeah, I don't know. DL's just hanging around. How are you feeling about that gap? Obviously, you were neck and neck with DL heading into the last card. I termed it as a title contender eliminator event, and you've certainly prevailed, and it looks like we're going again.
Honestly, I don't think a performance that I've had could have been any worse than the UFC 254 performance. However, I am glad to see that was a one and done. I got the lead. I fell way behind with that. Honestly, shocking performance. Maybe I'm not meant to lead the entire way to the end. Maybe I'm designed to just ride on your coattails until I can take it out at the end. So I will say a return to form, and hopefully I don't get in the lead too quickly. and then fall to pieces like I did at UFC 254.
What a shambles that was. And speaking of which, you're right, it was a much better fortnight for you, Statman. I thought you'd absolutely lost the plot after UFC 254.
Mate, me too.
Speaking of which, I actually caught up with a good mutual friend of ours this past weekend, Zach Frederick. And, you know, we might just take a moment and have a listen what Zach had to say. Boys, I am joined here today by our good friend all the way from sunny California. Of course, I talk about the man who reached out to the potty about a month ago and threw down a challenge for the ages to go head-to-head with Stats. As it turned out, he ended up joining Team Stoney for UFC 254, and together we took down the Statman. Zach, how are you, mate?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. We are traveling really good. Really keen for the next UFC card. We'll get you your tips on that a little bit later. But before we do, run me through the bet. So what was it that made you want to reach out and throw down the challenge and go head-to-head with the Statman?
Well, I've been listening to you guys for a couple months now, since about the summer. And the last 2 or 3 podcasts before, I noticed Stats was on a little bit of a run. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know what it is, but I felt like Stoney was getting a little bit of disrespect. I'm like, you know, I'm going to back him up. We're definitely cut from the same cloth. Birds of a feather flock together. And I'm like, you know what? This guy, he keeps getting bullied. Statman's running around here. Sugar Snags does the whole third person thing. But really, all the cockiness is coming from capital T, the capital S Statman.
I absolutely love it. You've summed up the podcast so succinctly and so accurately. It's phenomenal. But we got there in the end, mate. It was a good card, some great fights, and I was actually surprised how different our picks were with the Statman. We went Rob Whittaker. He was on Jared Cannonier. As it turned out, it was a card made in heaven. Was it a clean sweep for us?
Oh, yeah. We got the whole thing. Also, Bobby Knuckles called me and said that Statman now has to turn in his citizenship card because he went against his countrymen. So can't believe he did that. I thought everybody was all going to pick. Like, we all going to pick Bobby Knuckles. But he's like, you know what? I don't think he's good enough anymore. And then he's going to beat Izzy for the championship, and we're all going to celebrate. And Statman's going to sit in the corner and be like, oh, I should have stayed with Bobby. I'm sorry.
Oh, I love it. Now, Zach, tell us a bit about your MMA journey, mate. How long have you been a fan of the sport? What was the turning point? Was there a particular fight or a particular event where it just clicked and you said, you know what, I'm a fan?
I was flipping through channels back when the WEC was a thing. And I don't know if I caught it live or if I just caught a replay, but it was Uriah Faber. It was one of his title fights. I can't remember exactly which one. But they were doing the whole introduction thing, and I'm from California, and they called him the California Kid. And I'm like, oh, like, this guy's a champion. He's a California Kid. He must be, like, you know, one of the best. And his flair, I liked his in-ring style, and I also liked his humility after the fight. You know, he's not a TJ Dillashaw or a Cody Garbrandt, and I really like that about him. And then when they merged, I can't remember it's Ivan something. I can't remember. But he's fighting him. He's climbing his back like a monkey. And, like, he's doing all this stuff. Like the dude lifted him up in, like, a crucifix. And then just Uriah swings his legs, gets a body triangle, gets a rear naked choke. And I'm like, dude, this guy just climbed that guy like a beautiful tanned blonde monkey and tapped him out. I'm like, this kid is crazy. And then I'm like, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. And then, of course, MMA has given us so much more great finishes from there on. And as soon as I saw that, though, I saw him just climb this guy and just take him down. I'm just like, this is great. This MMA thing is awesome. And I was hooked.
100%. And you touched on it. You're right, Faber. What a lad. So I had the absolute pleasure of meeting him over at one of the UFC fan expos in, I think, 2012. And yeah, you can tell a lot, I think, about fighters, just the time they give to the fans. And, you know, even outside his official duties of the meet and greets, like in the lobby, you know, just the time he was giving to everyone who wanted a photo and a quick chat. Just a phenomenal person. And that's something that'll stick with me. Not only a great fighter, but yeah, having the pleasure to have a chat with him just seems like a great human.
Yeah. And he takes all the butt chin jokes, like, just great. Like, I've never seen somebody get made fun of. Do you see the Ultimate Fighter when it was him and McGregor and McGregor tells him to cover up his chin because this is a kid's show. And I'm like, dude, that's great. And then he just laughs it off. I'm like, I like him because you see what happens when people do that and they're TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt and they just try to fight each other. Save that for the ring. Just save it later so I can watch it, the whole thing.
100%. Now, speaking of the ring or the cage or the mats, you'll be well aware that already we've got a member of the potty, Sugar Snags, who he likes to remind everyone that he's trained once or twice. Sometimes he even gives fighters a bit of advice when DL and him are in the studio interviewing some of the fighters in Eternal. But rumour has it, Zach, you've got a bit of experience on the mats as well. Talk us through it. Yeah,
I've been training off and on for a few years, and I'm just a lowly white belt. I basically, when you're a white belt, and I learned the hard way, when you're a white belt, all you do is just get tapped out. You learn how not to do things, and then you learn how not to do things the right way. The other day we were training, and my coach got me into an arm bar, and I'm like, dude, I know how to get out of this. Stand up, collapse him, and then just pull your arm out. And as soon as I stood up to collapse him, he rearranged his legs, put me in a triangle, and I tapped out. And I'm like, I can't believe that's all. When you're a white belt, that's all you do is you think you got it, but you don't. But I have a challenge. Snags, you're ever over stateside, all right? We're going to roll for 3 5-minute rounds, all right? And the winner is the show's white belt, all right? You are the run it back white belt champion. That's what we're going to call it. So if you ever come stateside, you let me know. I'll come to you wherever you are.
Love it. Absolutely love it. We've already taken down the Statman, and now we're looking to extend and take down Sugar Snags. I think DL and myself are just breathing a sigh of relief that we're not in the spotlight here, Zach.
Yeah, with Sugar Snags, it's all friendly. Like with the Statman, sorry, capital T, the capital S Statman. It was a little bit of, hey, quit picking on my boy Stoney. But with Sugar Snags, it's all friendly.
I love it.
A couple of competitive guys.
Now, man, earlier this week, we put a poll on the Twitter sphere asking listeners what's the biggest fight that the UFC can make in 2021. Now, we had 45% come back with Israel Adesanya and John Jones, obviously a fairly popular one. 36% said Colby Covington and Masvidal. Then we had 18% on Conor McGregor and Masvidal. Keen to get your thoughts, mate, not only on those ones, but is there anything else, another fight that we might have missed that you'd be keen to see heading into next year?
I definitely picked Masvidal Covington because I didn't agree with Izzy fighting Jones because he still has a lot to do in the 185 division. There's so many more like good quality middleweights. Darren Till just needs to get on a 3 or 4 fight win streak, and he's back. He needs to run it back with Bobby Knuckles before he tries to go up a division. You know, there's a lot of good young guys that are coming up in the middleweight that he really, if he wants to say that he's the GOAT, because everybody wants to be the greatest. If he wants to even be just the greatest middleweight, like you can't defend your belt twice in really, really bad, boring fights. Not his fault. Yoel Romero came with the worst game plan I've ever seen. Probably hands down the worst fight ever. Paulo Costa came with, I think he came in with the game plan, and then as soon as they got in the ring, he just abandoned it because we've never, like, he just wanted to counter, and he didn't do that versus Romero. He went after him, and I'm like, you're going for the belt. You better not wait on the guy to punch him back, you know. I think Izzy has a lot more work to do in the middleweights before he wants to jump up and fight John Jones. If you want to fight him, just to fight him because you don't like the guy, that's great. But if you're trying to jump into light heavyweight and get the belt from Jan Blachowicz, you got some work to do in your own division. You know, John Jones ran through everybody. DC ran through everybody that ran through John Jones. And then DC went up. Khabib ran through everybody in his division before he's like, you know what, I'm good. And honestly, he doesn't have anything left to prove. Izzy does. Izzy has, you know, it's like I think the most memorable fight and the biggest fight of his career was when he was fighting for the interim belt with Kevin Gastelum.
Yeah.
Even when he fought for the title against Bobby Knuckles, it's like that was a good fight. You know, Robert Whittaker didn't challenge him. Like, did you see Izzy's face after he fought Gastelum? Like, he had a swollen lip, he had a black eye. It was nuts. If you look at his face after all the other title fights, he comes out clean. Hands down, Kevin Gastelum has definitely given him the biggest run for his money, and it was only for the interim belt. It wasn't really a challenge.
Now, that Gastelum, that was a big reason why I actually thought Paulo Costa might Yeah, might really take it to Izzy, but you hit the nail on the head. That game plan just went out the window, and it's one of those ones that how much do you pin that on Paulo Costa sort of throwing it away versus he gets in there and then just gets overwhelmed with what's in front of him, and how much credit do we give Izzy? But I totally agree with you, man. We had it on Hot Take last week on the last episode, Israel going up, and I think I was the outlier when I said that I still felt he had more to do. He'd fought 50% of the top 10 in his division. He'd only defended twice, so I would like to see him really clear that division out before going up. But in any case, we're going to see that in 2021 when he goes up to fight Jan in January. But yeah, Colby Covington and Masvidal, that would be an absolute banger. I would love. They've teased the tough return. You look at some of the all-time great toughs, and I go back to the Kenny Shamrock, Tito Ortiz, Rampage, and Rashad. There's been some great coach rivalries, and I think, I don't know about you, Zach, I love it when there's a bit of animosity in the coaches. As the show went on, it became more about respect, and we're here for up-and-coming fighters, and we're here to nurture the talent. I get that, but nothing replaces some genuine animosity from a viewing perspective, at least from my end. So yeah, I'd love to see Colby Covington and Masvidal on The Ultimate Fighter.
That'd be pretty entertaining. I think just Colby would probably just annoy Masvidal to the point where Masvidal is probably going to clap back and say something, because they're both politically aligned, because they're both conservatives. Weeks before the election, Jorge was doing rallies and stuff down in South Florida. I think they did one at American Top Team, matter of fact. And he did it supporting Trump. And of course, Colby is, Trump's bestie, I guess. If you get a call from the president after you win, I think you can say he's your bestie. But anyway, Masvidal is not really like as much drama as he kind of, conjures up. He's not really the kind of guy that is going to come after you first. I think Colby's going to have to run his mouth, which Colby always does. So we have that to look forward to. Even backstage with Leon Edwards is walking, and he was jawing at Jorge first, and before like anything even happened. And then Jorge came back and, just started jawing, the whole scuffle and all that stuff. So I think it's going to be like the first couple episodes might be a little bit boring, and then Colby's going to get under his skin, and we're going to get hopefully TJ Dillashaw, Cody Garbrandt, where even the coaches, like the wrestling coach and everything, are fighting each other. That's going to be pretty entertaining to watch. And I really want to see how Colby interacts with other people, because I think as soon as you put Colby with his own team, he's going to be a totally different dude. He's going to actually try to help people, not talk trash. Just, we'll see the wholesome side of him.
You hear that. You hear a lot of people who know Colby. They say that he's actually quite humble, quite respectful, but we just don't see that side. At least that's not what gets broadcast. So it would be interesting to see how he interacts with up and coming fighters and passes on his wisdom. I think it'd be fascinating to see. But anyway, are there any other fights that we haven't touched on that you'd be keen to see next year?
Whoever they want to put in front of Volkanovski. Because I don't have an answer for that man. Like, you can, like, he ran through Max Holloway twice, and Max Holloway ran through the entire division. So it's kind of like a DC John Jones thing, where John Jones runs through the division and then he leaves. And then DC, now that he's champion, now you have to find people for him. It's going to be hard. Like, I'm interested to see who they put, because I think either you outright just say, hey, Ortega, number one contender, let him fight. that's not entertaining to me, because we saw what Max did to Ortega, and I don't know. I think you put, and I know Brian Ortega would probably be mad because Dana pretty much already said it was number one contender fight, but you put Zabit against Ortega, that's like legit number one contender fight. Whoever wins that, put them in front of Volkanovski. I would want to put money on Zabit, because I want to see that matchup more than pretty much a rematch, somebody who already fought for the title. So I like to see fresh blood in there, especially since Zabit, I think, is undefeated in the UFC. So I like to see him come up and get some.
Zach, before we let you go, mate, we really keen to get your insight into UFC 255. We've got a couple of really big fights happening, Figueiredo and Alex Perez. And also in the women's, we've got Valentina Shevchenko and Jennifer Maia. Really keen to get your thoughts on who takes those fights, man.
All right, let's start off with another really unpopular opinion. You guys ready for this? Yeah. Are y'all sitting down? Get rid of the flyweight division. Get rid of men's 125, because there's no one there. You had I was here for it when Henry Cejudo was here, and then he leaves, and I'm like, all right, perfect time, get rid of it, let's do it, because you don't have a whole lot of talent, you don't have a whole lot of recognizable names. I'm not trying to say that those guys aren't talented. I am trying to say that UFC's flyweight division is just poorly stacked. Like, one championship has great smaller weight guys. Like, they just got DJ. We won't talk about that. That's not my favorite trade of all time. Shout out to Ben Askren. Thanks, you bum. We lost the greatest flyweight of all time for you to lose 3 in a row. But the flyweight division in the UFC is pretty weak. There's not really a whole lot of there's not a lot of talent. There's not a lot of you don't have a face for the division. Like, in every other division you have like 3 or 4 faces. Like, in the flyweight, it's kind of like the New York Jets. Like, you can't name more than one person. That's only because they're the quarterback. Like, besides Sam Darnold, who else can you name on the Jets? Nobody. Flyweight division, all you got is Davison Figueiredo because he's champ. I'm just trying to figure. And to be honest, like, everyone else lost to Demetrius Johnson or Henry Cejudo. So it's like, all right, now that the good guys lost, it's like all the mediocre guys are fighting for a belt. It's just, you don't really have a whole lot of talent. But I guess I'll go with the champ, Davison Figueiredo. I'll pick him. Jennifer Maia, she needs to win. I'm sick and tired of seeing Valentina Shevchenko do that dumb dance every time she wins. Needs to go away.
That gun tattoo and the silly dance, they used to really grind on me, but now I don't mind her.
Hey, man, whatever floats your boat. If you like the little ballerina twirl thing, that's great. I'm just do something else, Celebrate some other way. Do like a backflip off the cage and then, some somersaults or something. I don't know. I'm just like, I think the main reason is I'm tired of seeing the same women challenge Amanda Nunes or anybody else for the belt, and then they lose. I got shout outs. I got shout outs before we're done. Hold on, Stoney. We ain't done yet. All right. Warriors Green. Hashtag, I told you not to fight that man. All right. I told you not to fight Greg Hardy. You went up and did it. Look what happened. All right. Look, get at me on Twitter at Zach_Frederick. I will manage you. I will find fighters that will not murder you like Greg Hardy did. I am for you. You are my favorite guy on Tough 28. All right. So get at me. Aljamain Sterling, Peter Yan. That fight's going to be great, by the way. I've been looking forward to that fight for like the last 4 months since Aljo beat Corey Sandhagen, and then Dana White denied him the title fight for like 2 months, and he's like, all right, he's the number one guy. Let's get it. Aljo, you keep getting stuck in Vegas without a ride. Get at me on Twitter. All right. You know how to find me. We talk all the time. And Darren Till put together a good win streak. Like, not just decisions. You need to knock some people out because somebody needs to fight Izzy. And I can't think of anyone else besides Darren Till because he's on the same level of Conor McGregor when it comes to trash talk. Him and Conor McGregor is just great. If you ever are bored, if you're sad or depressed, go look at Darren Till's Twitter and just roll through it, and you'll be dying, bro. He is a character, and he's hilarious. Oh,
he's great value.
Uriah Faber, hashtag I told you not to fight that man. Peter Yan, I know this is like last year, but I told you not to fight that man. I told you it wasn't going to be good. I'm sick and tired of the UFC putting up these great hallmarks of their sport against these young, hot, talented guys. Who did Sean fight? Sugar Sean, whatever that dude's name is. He fought Eddie Wineland a couple months ago, or earlier this year, last year, whenever it was. Same thing. Yeah. They have a Eddie Wineland's just good staple of the 135, 145, and they put up Sean O'Malley, which I'll say this, unpopular opinion, you're a bum. I heard you go on that podcast and say you don't have a loss. You do have a loss. And what's worse than that is that you hobbled out on a stretcher, which I've never seen in the UFC. So you always have that on your record. Good job. Okay, I'm good. That's all the shout-outs, except for Sean O'Malley. It's not a shout-out. I'm just saying, you suck and I hate you.
I love it. You've called out both Sugar Seans. We've got Sugar Snags down here in Australia quaking in his boots after that call-out, and Sugar Sean O'Malley, I'm not sure if he's as petrified as Snags is, but no, you've done well, man.
You know what? We're taking the Sugar moniker away from Sean O'Malley, and it solely belongs to Snags. Sugar Snags is now the only person that is worthy of the Sugar title. Well, and Rashad Evans, but still.
Sugar Snags' ego anymore by giving him the sole title, but he will appreciate that 100%. Zach, it has been an absolute pleasure, man. We love the call out. We love the challenge. We love the stats nickname. Loved everything about today. It's been great. And who knows, somewhere down the line, we might jump back on and get your thoughts on how everything's traveling.
Yeah, let me know. And don't forget, it's capital T, the capital S Statman.
Love it. All right. Take care, my man.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome, Zach, from capital T, the capital S Statman, for your, what was that, like 20 minutes of fame almost? So you're welcome. I hate to see people benefit from my failures, but, you were right. My citizenship is in the mail on the way to Robert Whittaker at Gracie Barra. It was disgraceful, and I did not want to go the route that I did. I knew that I picked a few risky picks on that card. I did think that I would be able to tempt you, Stoney, to join me on a few risky picks, but it did turn out that every calculated risk that I took blew up so badly in my face for that card, except for Khabib by decision. I mean, that was... I went Khabib by decision, and he finished it.
Yeah, it was one of those ones, I think, as you were reading them out, and after the podcast, we both commented, it really could have gone the complete other way. It was just one of those cards, and as it panned out, all the luck was with Zach and myself on that particular night. But, we'd game plan for that one, Statman. There was no trickery. You couldn't have baited us to changing any of those picks. But yeah, great card, and thanks to Zach for jumping on. It was great to interact with some of our fans. We get a lot of interaction, obviously, through Twitter and Instagram, but that was something fairly unique. We've never had anyone, throw down the challenge. So kudos to Zach for that. And also, if there's any other fans or any other listeners, I should say, out there who are keen to engage, this should serve as a, we're open to any and all ideas. So by all means, let's hear it.
The quickest and easiest way to get our attention, of course, is to purchase a supporter tee. A few of them actually have built-in rewards to join us on the podcast, offer your picks, offer your suggestions, join us for Hot Take. So that is obviously a nice direct avenue. Can't promise that a little bit of shit talk won't go astray either, as evidenced by Zach there. But yeah, please, obviously, if you are enjoying the podcast, please message us. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know why you think Snags is deliberately sabotaging his picks. Is he just that good a dude? Does he just want the success of the podcast to rely on the comedy of his errors? Or is he, just like throwing darts at a board when it comes to picks? It's boggling, but maybe some of you have some insight into it. I'm excited to hear your words. Should we head into UFC 255?
Absolutely. Let's get it.
First fight off the ranks, a light heavyweight bout between Mauricio Shogun Hua and Paul Craig. This fight is a rematch of their 2019 draw. There have been 6 draw rematches in UFC history, with 3 ending in TKO and 3 going to the judges' scorecard. Stoney, can you name 2 other draw rematches that have taken place?
Mate, I'm drawing absolute blanks. I cannot name one. Hit us up.
So one of my favorite trilogies ever, Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard, the second bout ending in a draw, the third bout ending in a TKO round 4 by Frankie Edgar.
Of course.
Mighty Mouse Johnson defeated Ian McCall after their flyweight tournament bout ended in a draw when it shouldn't have, because there was actually a sudden victory round in there. We also had Rashad Evans and Tito Ortiz, Mark Hunt and Bigfoot Silva, Tyron Woodley and Stephen Thompson, and then a weird one. Those 5 are all quite epic, but Bobby Green versus Lando Venata rematched their draw.
There you go. Out of all them, I'm absolutely ashamed to say the only one that I'm really kicking myself is Wonderboy and Woodley, because that was one that I was so invested in their fights and in that little, I guess there wasn't an exchange of trash talk, but I'll call it a rivalry just based on how the fights went. So yeah, for that one to slip my mind, I'm filthy, Statman.
It's all good, mate. It's no worries. You are first up because you are first off the ranks. Do you want to give us your picks for this fight?
Absolutely, I do. So from memory, the last one, Paul Craig, he was a late replacement, so he took that one on fairly short notice from memory. Not sure how much that impacted his performance on the night. Obviously, they went to the decision and it was a draw. I'd like to think when I'm in doubt, I've got a little theory, Statman, and you tell me if I'm doing anything wrong here. But when in doubt, I really can't split this one. So I'll always err on the side of who is the younger fighter. And I look at Shogun Rua, who's 38, and surprisingly younger than what I thought. When I looked that up, I assumed he was in his early 40s. So he comes in at 38. Paul Craig coming in at a tender 32. On that basis alone, and also looking back at Paul Craig taking the last fight on relatively short notice, he's got a good stand-up game. He's really good with his grappling. I'm leaning towards Paul Craig in this one.
I think you're on the money. We spoke about this briefly with the Jose Aldo fight. It's less significant about the birth age, how old you are physically, and your fight age. Shogun Rua was a legend when he became a UFC champion. When he lost to John Jones, the next generation, Shogun Rua was 29 years old, which is insane. Obviously, John Jones was much younger at 23 and 8 months, but Shogun Rua had the air of someone much older because he'd been in the fight game for so long. Being in the fight game for so long and suffering as many injuries and defeats as Shogun Rua has changes a fighter. I'm typically of the opinion, if you look at Shogun Rua's most recent significant defeats, Rogerio Nogueira is on there, which is not necessarily a significant defeat. Mm-hmm. Probably the one that stands out to me is his defeat of Tyson Pedro, who does have a victory over Paul Craig. However, I do think that Shogun Rua is probably past his prime, and the biggest blip that I could see on Paul Craig's record was his draw against Shogun Rua in 2018. So looking into that, I will go Paul Craig while acknowledging that Shogun Rua is 5-1-1 in 2020. It is honestly insane. So I'm taking Paul Craig in this one. Did you want me to run through DL and Snags' picks, or are you happy to?
No, if you could, that would be a tremendous step, man, because I don't have their picks up. Why would I take any notice of DL or Sugar Snags' picks? That's a silly question.
That is perfectly fair. So DL has gone with the pack. He's gone for Paul Craig, while Sugar Snags has gone the outside choice, backing Shogun Rua.
Look out.
Snags going yeah, that makes sense, right? Do you feel confident in your Paul Craig pick now?
Look, I feel more confident, but I was just about to say, like, I expect Sugar Snags to start throwing up some really wild Hail Marys over not only these cards, but the next few cards. So, don't be surprised if he's picking some ridiculous picks in the next few fights.
Do you reckon is it possible that he could come back and win this one?
No.
It's just physically no. The trend is in. It's done.
I would like to draw it out. I genuinely don't think it's mathematically possible, is it? So we have...
Not as long as we're making picks.
Correct.
Moving on to the women's flyweight belt, we've got Caitlin Chukagian versus Cynthia Calvillo. Four of Calvillo's last 6 fights have been fought at a catchweight due to missed weight cuts. Calvillo was responsible for 2 of them, while her opponents for the other 2, obviously not ideal for someone who is making their run at a title. Luckily for her, she has moved up to flyweight, and Jessica Ai was responsible for their missed weight at her new weight class. Stoney, you want to take away?
100%. Look, I do like Cynthia. She's an explosive fighter. I like everything she brings to the table, but I just like the chook, the dog, the underdog in this one. Caitlin Chukagian, I think, is going to get this one done. I look at her record. She's gone win, loss, which means the science points to a win, Statman. You cannot dispute that. I believe this will be her 4th fight in 2020. So obviously looking to keep super active. I think Cynthia has only had the 1 from memory. So always hard to read. How much do you read into activity? But certainly Caitlin has been very active this year. And I think she comes away with a win in this one.
All well-reasoned points. However, in this fight, I am going against you. I'm going Cynthia Calvillo. I think that flyweight is a more natural home for her. I think Chuk has hit her ceiling inside the flyweight division. Obviously, Valentina Shevchenko is a hard ceiling to hit, and I don't think that after the loss to Shevchenko, she came back and defeated Shevchenko's sister. But I don't see her ascending to the same heights that she has in the past defeating Jennifer Maia and the others like that. Cynthia Calvillo, I think, is in a more natural weight class and should take this one. DL actually agrees with me. He's going Cynthia Calvillo, whereas Sugar Snags is going with Stoney,
No.
Caitlin Chukagian.
No.
How does that make you feel?
Is it too late to change my tip, Statman?
It is, absolutely. We've got it on recording here, so you absolutely cannot change your picks. Awkward. Moving on to our welterweight bout, we've got Mike Perry versus Tim Means. After an unconventional cornering approach in his last fight out, Perry was looking to expand his corner past just having his girlfriend, Latori Gonzalez, to offer him striking advice. He opened up a bidding war, and once the dust had settled, it was to be a random Redditor and frequent Perry antagonizer Darren Till in his corner for his fight. That is until Dana White entered the conversation and blocked Perry from auctioning off his corner.
Oh, shit.
Dana White must have nightmares about seeing Mike Perry in headlines, I reckon.
100%. I have nightmares about seeing Mike Perry in
Has he auctioned off his corner? Has he knocked out an old defenseless man in a bar? What's next in the Mike Perry Chronicles?
Yeah, what a fascinating ride it's been. And regretfully, Statman, I need to put my hand up because this was one of the worst picks I ever made. And I knew it was bad at the time, but I thought I thought I had some rationale behind it. I actually tipped Mickey Gall and I knew it was bad, but everything was just shambling, like spiraling out of control in Mike Perry's life. Both, he's coming off 2 losses in succession. He's getting in all sorts of drama outside of the cage. He had a split from his longtime girlfriend and corner woman. There was nothing. Platinum Princess. How dare I forget? There was nothing, going the way of Mike Perry heading into that. And I thought maybe this is just a man who's, spiraled off the rails and this is just the sad demise. And silly Stoney, because he was never going to lose that one to Mickey Gall. I'm really just fascinated to see what Mike Perry we get. So Tim Means obviously brings a wealth of experience and, an increase in skill from what Mickey Gall had to offer. I look back, it's actually not that long ago where we saw Mike Perry defeat Alex Oliveira. He took Paul Felder to a split decision win. So he's got some big scalps. This guy can absolutely throw down, but I think sometimes the persona of Mike Perry, and especially coming off a couple of losses pre-Mickey Gall, people, including myself, were quick to forget that. So, I'm going to draw back and have a look at, some of the evidence that he has presented. And I think he does have enough. If his mind's on the fight, I think he's got enough to get this one done.
So you take Mike Perry.
100%, lock it in.
I was also shocked when you picked Mickey Gall for that fight. That was a bold move. I think Mike Perry did come out and show that there are levels to this, and Mickey Gall should never really been in the same cage. In saying that, Mike Perry looked awful against Mickey Gall. He beat him convincingly, but Mike Perry, as an athlete who once went 9-0 in MMA, should have won much more convincingly in that fight. I think what Tim Means brings to the table is an aggressive striking approach that is technical and hits hard. And I don't know if the Mike Perry of the last year and a half, can fully stand up to it. My big concern going into this fight is Tim Means, once iron-jawed, no longer has an iron chin. And my big fear is that Mike Perry will land a bomb on him, which he is more than capable of doing. However, I'm taking Tim Means in this fight. I think that Tim Means has the necessary skill to be able to sort this one out. DL has gone Mike Perry. Sugar Snags, Mike Perry.
Oh dear, this card spells trouble already.
This is where I'm going to claw back some picks. If Cynthia Calvillo and Tim Means both get up, you are looking at a end new in the driver's seat. Heading into the co-main event, women's flyweight title bout between Valentina Shevchenko and Jennifer Maia. While Maia has had 5 fights scheduled for flyweight, she has only hit the championship weight of 125 pounds once before. Twice she hit the scales at the non-title limit of 126, and twice she has missed weight completely. weighing in at 127.2 pounds and 129 pounds in back-to-back fights in 2019. So fingers crossed this fight still goes ahead as a flyweight championship bout. Stoney, what's your pick?
Look, it'd be a bold man to tip against Valentina, and I'm not feeling that bold tonight, Statman, especially after you've already pointed out that I could already be trailing heading into this fight. You know, I'm not about trying to take Hail Marys at this point. What I will say, I do like Jennifer Maia a lot. She just got done beating up my girl, the bad mofo Jojo, which I wasn't thrilled about. But I trace back and I look that she went down to Caitlin Chukagian at UFC 244 in a unanimous decision. Caitlin then went on to fight Valentina and completely, demonstrated just how far below the level of Valentina Shevchenko she was on that night. I know MMA maths never or rarely works, but just looking at that, I think if Caitlin was able to get the decision win over Jennifer Maia, I think that spells enormous concern for Jennifer heading into the Valentina fight. So all things being equal, if Valentina, rocks up and she's had no issues in her training camp or anything like that, which we're not privy to, this should be an absolute walk in the park. I'm tipping a round 2 TKO for Valentina.
I think that's the big thing. You can say, if Valentina Shevchenko shows up, she should handily defeat Jennifer Maia. And I don't think that there has been a fighter who's more consistently showed up than Valentina Shevchenko. There's never been a question of her dedication. There's never been a question of her showing up and competing at the highest level. Jennifer Maia, I do not see an avenue for her in this fight. The big thing for me was trying to work out whether or not I figured that this would be a relatively quick finish or a long drawn-out beating. I have gone, unfortunately, the exact same as Stoney. I'm going a round 2 TKO for Valentina Shevchenko. I think that we'll see a bit of Anderson Silva style feeling out process in the first round, and once it's been dialed in, we should start to see an annihilation in the second. Yep. I do like Jennifer Maia. I would be more surprised than I have been in a long time if she manages to pull this one off. DL has gone Valentina Shevchenko round 1 TKO, obviously feeling much as the boys do that this is a bit of a skill divide. And Sugar Snags actually agrees with the both of us, Stoney. He's gone Valentina Shevchenko round 2 TKO, which would normally make me really, really concerned for my pick. However, such is my faith and belief in Valentina Shevchenko going into this fight. I don't think even Sugar Snags can topple this one.
It's such a Monty that even the worst tipper on the podcast couldn't possibly butcher. Is that what you're saying, Stat? I don't want to put words in your mouth because this is...
I challenge God himself to side against Sugar Snags, as he so often does in this one. I think if God was to come down and challenge us in this fight, just because Snags has done it, Valentina Shevchenko would look him dead in the eye and say, not today.
Love it.
It's time!
I think it's time for our main event, a flyweight title fight between Davison Figueiredo and Alex Perez. 28 out of the 28 finishes from both Figueiredo and Perez have come in the first 2 rounds. 17 times their fights have made it to round 3. All 17 have gone to a decision. These guys like to finish fights quick or take it to a decision. What are we thinking, Stoney?
Look, I think we had a good chat with Zach earlier, just in relation to the future of the flyweight division. I think he hit the nail on the head where you look at someone like Figueiredo, who just at this stage appears classes ahead. Obviously, Joseph Benavidez, widely regarded as one of the best fighters to never touch UFC gold, and he was handily just disposed of, in both fights with Figueiredo. So on that basis, look, I do like Alex Perez. I do see a scenario where he potentially, causes an upset in this one, but again, it would be a bold man. And look, if we were heading into the last card of the year and I trailed by, a faithful point and we had to send it to sudden death, I might take a different approach. But in the current environment, Statman, I'm going to hold firm with Figueiredo, and I'm going with a round 2 TKO.
Davison Figueiredo, Joseph Benavidez 2 is one of the most violent flyweight fights of all time. Ranking in the top 5 for sure is their first meeting as well. I love Joey B. I think he's a fantastic fighter, pioneer of the lower weight classes, and to see such a violence happen to him was really, really disconcerting. Have you rewatched that fight, Stoney?
I've not. I feel that I've got a good recollection of the fight, but I've not gone back and rewatched it.
Watch it again, because watching it live and then knowing what's happening as you're watching it is two different experiences. I watched it again in preparation for this fight, and I was just struck by Figueiredo. He was lasered in on that performance.
Yep.
I don't think anyone else in the flyweight division can handle the violence that he brings, which is sensational for the flyweight division, because if anything can capture the casual fan's heart, it is unrelenting violence. And Davison Figueiredo is that man. I think that he takes his fight. I think that he makes it look, I would say easy, but he's going to make it look brutal. I'm taking Davison Figueiredo with round 1 TKO. And I was honestly, the hardest decision for me is he going to submit him or is he going to TKO him? I went with the TKO. I like Alex Perez. I think that he has a lot of skills that he can bring to the sport. I just think Davison Figueiredo is insane, and I'm actually very, very excited to see what takes place on the undercard of UFC 255 between Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval. Both outstanding flyweight prospects, and you have to think that whoever wins that, if they win convincingly, will get the next shot against Davison Figueiredo. So a lot of, and I feel bad because I'm just clearly writing off Alex Perez in this fight, but I think we're going to see 2 flyweight champions retain their belts come UFC 255.
Absolutely. I struggle to think of a UFC card in recent memory where the co-main and the main appear to be such formalities. I may stand corrected, but this one to me, it was a very easy, and I think you hit the nail on the head. What kept me, stressing throughout the afternoon was more about how is it going to finish as opposed to who is going to get the finish. So, really intrigued by this one. You also mentioned earlier on in this card will be Brandon the Raw Dog Royval. Super impressive. Now, who did he touch up from City Kickboxing?
Kai Kara France. He just. That was an insane scrap as well. That was such a fun fight.
Really fun fight. So that was another one where I tipped with the heart, as I'm known to do. But deep down, I had a bad feeling heading into that fight. And Brandon, absolutely, showed all the class in that one. And I'm really looking forward. I like him. I want to jump on the train. So let's hope he gets it done this weekend also.
You've made me sweat a little bit by mentioning you can't think of a time when a main and co-main event had more certainty behind it, and I think back, UFC 129 is probably the last time I can remember going, I know who's going to win these fights. And to be honest, they both won. Jose Aldo over Mark Hominick and George St. Pierre over Jake Shields, but they were both amongst the closest fights that either of those two superstars had ever had up until that point. So I'm sorry, maybe I should have gone Shevchenko and Figueiredo by decision, maybe, or that makes me nervous. DL has gone with the boys Figueiredo via round 2 TKO, whereas Sugar Snags has taken Alex Perez by unanimous decision. Well, I say decision, which is a bold choice.
Well,
as per the stat, we know if it gets to the 3rd round, it's going to the decision. So maybe he got a privy to the stats before he jumped on.
Look, he clearly didn't. I think he just tossed a coin as per most of his main event tips this year. But, I did make the call that we're going to see some outlandish tips. So it absolutely pains me to walk away knowing that I've only tipped 2 differently from him on this occasion, Statman. So a little bit nervous on that basis alone. But if I take the Sugar Snags element away from my picks, I'm reasonably confident. I think Mike Perry, I think we see a better Mike Perry than what we anticipated seeing in his last fight. And what was the other point of difference that
Caitlin Chukagian, you took.
Correct. I've always had a soft spot for Caitlin. I don't think I've ever tipped her, but she's done well in fights where I didn't expect her to do well, and then in fights where I've expected to do well, she's been underwhelming. So that doesn't bode well. But I feel like every time you have someone who, strokes the heart somewhat, there's a reason for it, Statman. And I think it's all my entire, following of Caitlin has led me to this point where she's going to get the job done, and it's going to be another one in the win column. And it's going to be a good card, a good night. I'm just going to enjoy it.
Let me get that straight. You're picking Caitlin Chukagian because she's inconsistent. Is that? I think that's where you ended up there.
Well, it's how I started off. I said if you look at her form, she's win loss, which scientifically means she's going to win. So you've caught me out there, but I owned that point right from the outset. So she is inconsistent, but I think we see a good performance from her against Cynthia, and bring it on.
That's it. That's a wrap for episode 37. As I mentioned, parentless this round around. I'm certain that DL and Snags will be cautiously optimistic as they tune in. Maybe a little bit sad about the amount of ribbing, especially Sugar Snags. We do love you, but your picks are completely awful. The boys will be back episode 38, but we hope that you enjoyed this special miniature episode. Me, Stoney, and Zach hanging out in this podcast. If you like what we're doing, please hit us up on our socials. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. Please like, share, comment, or subscribe to the podcast. Those guys really do help us reach an audience that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to reach. If you would like to more directly support the podcast, please have a look at the supporter tees. They are still available online. Hit up the link in our social bio. They're a way that you can directly influence and directly help the podcast grow with a bunch of cool perks for you to be able to interact with us on a more personal level and get your voice out into the podcast world. That's it for episode 37, boys. I am the Statman.
I am Stoney.
And we will run it back with you on the next Run It Back podcast.
I think we did okay.
I think we did okay. I think we did fine.
It wasn't just Stoney and the Statman talking about JLP for 25 minutes straight.
No. I mean, that would have been a pretty good podcast though.